Now, welcome to Lunchtime with a Librarian. My name is Mary Bear Shannon. I am a reference librarian at the Haverford Township Free Library. We have been doing this program for the last month or so, interviewing important staff and other stakeholders who serve our library. And I am thrilled to be here today with Alice Callison. She is one of our board of trustees for the library. Alice, thank you so much for being here. And we'd just like to get to know you a little bit better, since you are an integral part of our governance, and we're really glad to have you here. So my first question is, and I'm pulling up my questions here, is just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah, first of all, thanks so much, Mary. It's really fun to be here. I've lived in Haverford Township for about 10-ish years, and I love it. And I am a mother of 2 boys, middle school and high school, and they are in the Haverford Township local schools. And let's see, I love to read. And that kind of brings us around to how we've ended up in this situation here today. Yeah.
And what do you do when you're not serving the library?
Yeah, so I'm a school administrator. I work in marketing and communications. So I work at a nearby school called Benchmark School in media. And we're a small school that serves kids with dyslexia and ADHD and other learning differences. And it's a really great, tight-knit, small community. And we are working really hard right now to get ready for the start of the school year.
Yes, yeah. It's the topic on everybody's lips and their minds. So
yes, sure enough.
Well, great. And what do you love most about serving on the board of trustees?
Well, I mean, it's wonderful to be able to make a real difference for this organization that I love so much. And it's also really great to be a part of this collection of people who care so deeply and give real, serious, rational thought to what's best for the community. So it's just it's a very affirming and hopefully useful kind of experience.
Okay. And what did you do before you came on our board of trustees?
So I was a member of our Friends of the Library group for several years, which, as I'm sure you know, Mary, is kind of a collection of volunteer fundraisers who do a series of events over the course of the year to raise money for the library, including most famously the library book sales, particularly in the summer, and fall. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, that's another group of people who really love the library and spend a lot of time, a lot of their personal time to make sure that the library has what it needs. And so that was terrific. And at the time when I left the Friends, I was serving as the vice president of the Friends. And then I moved on to the board of trustees.
Yeah, we just could not do what we do without the Friends. So we are very grateful to their fundraising and their support, and also just helping us with the books that come in, the donations. We are not taking donations at the moment, but in a given year we get just hundreds of thousands of books that are donated to us, that mostly go in our sale, that really helps to support us. So thank you for that service as well.
My pleasure.
So I've got my questions here on my tablet, and of course it keeps going to sleep. So let me just pull up my questions here. So, and what drew you to libraries?
The books? I very clearly remember when I was new to town, going to the library to sign up for my library card. I took my kids, who were literally 3 and 5, and I was so excited I got them library cards too. They promptly lost them, of course, but so I feel at home and connected to libraries. I feel like they're such an important part of a community, and I don't think I can speak highly enough of the service that they provide to our community and all communities. It's such like the it's the heart, but it's also, I mean, it's because it feeds the intellectual mind of a community too. I think it's indispensable. So, you know, in addition to the pleasure I get from it personally, it makes me so happy to be in a space that does so much for so many different people.
Okay. And what are your favorite books?
So it's very hard for me to pick favorites. It's always hard for me to pick favorites. But I usually come down between two favorites. And I feel like they're pretty common favorites, so it's going to feel kind of cliched, but I come down between Austen's Pride and Prejudice and To Kill a Mockingbird. Like I come back to them a lot, I reread them, you know, so they're kind of comfort food, and they have a special place in my heart for me.
Do you have certain genres that you like better than others?
Well, I read a lot of YA. I think this is an amazing time to be reading YA. There are such incredible characters and adventure and romance and story and writing. There's just amazing things going on right now, and it's so deep. And I think that for me, it's kind of a richer experience than reading books written for grown-ups, kind of. And I do that too, but I keep coming back to YA because it's great. I think that there's a bit of a stigma still about grown-ups reading books that are intended for younger audiences, but I feel like that's a shame. You know, that's their problem, really. And so I'm putting in a plug for more people to enjoy what's going on in YA right now.
It is. I would agree. I think it is some of the most innovative writing that's happening right now.
Yeah,
is YA.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And what were some of your favorite books growing up?
Oh gosh, I loved mysteries of all kinds. You know, ones intended for kids, and then at some early age, I started reading Agatha Christie's. I was very attached to the Trixie Belden series. Do you remember Trixie Belden?
I do.
Yeah. So and I was a really fast reader as a kid, and I would buy them and I'd read one in like a couple hours. So I would just like plow through them, and I had the whole collection, you know, in sequence in my room. And I clearly remember, I had a friend at the time, you know, I was like 13-ish when I sold them off. I want to say I was 13. So my friend at the time had a younger sister who was getting into them, and I was like, oh well, I've read all of them, I'm going to, you know, give them away. So my friend came over, or my friend's sister came over with her duffel bag, and I sold them all for like 50 cents a piece, and she walked away with my big duffel bag of books, her big duffel bag, and I've regretted that. I mean, they'd be clogging up my life now, but you know, it's kind of a shame, the things you do. And you don't realize that it's going to be sentimental for you later, but that's okay. But lots of books. I mean, like I read all the time, all different things, you know, so it's hard to say, but they stand out in my youth.
Given that you were into mysteries, did you read any Nancy Drew?
Yes, I did. In fact, speaking of things that I have held on to, I read Nancy Drew's, and my mom, my mom had some kind of, I guess they were first editions, but they were so widely printed in her youth that they're probably not very valuable. But I had those on my shelf too, and I kept them. And I don't know if you were aware of this, but in the 80s, there was like a new, young, hip, like Nancy Drew reboot that was like this, like sexy adventurous kind of Nancy Drew. Yep. So I read some of those too. So yes. Yep.
I have a 1930s version of The Mystery of Larkspur Lane. And she was really written very differently than the ones that came out in the 50s and the 60s. She was much more plucky, I think is the word. And she was a little bit more independent than I think than how they kind of put her in the kind of the McCarthy era of.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to read because they do change over time in terms of basic uh, kind of with trends and what I think society seems to want at the time. But the 30s ones, I've read a couple of them, but I have
Like
one.
Flapper Nancy Drew? Like, yeah.
Just independent, more independent, more I don't know, it kind of she had a kind of a different relationship with Carson Drew. She was less like yes father and more kind of yeah, so it's and with Ned too, so
Yeah. Oh, I want to read this.
yeah, so
I wonder, so was it rewritten, or is if you find Larkspur Lane now, is it still the 30s
they
version?
they are rewritten in style. I think
Wow.
they are. So because Carolyn Keene is not
Yeah. It's a pen name.
an actual, it's a pen name. Yeah. So it's actually a company that writes them. So
Oh, and I think what always fascinated me, even as a kid, and I still kind of think about it, how strange it is that, there was no expectation for Nancy to go to college, and she and her friends were like 18 and just tooling around. They had nothing to do. They didn't have
yeah,
jobs. They weren't
yeah,
students. They were just kind of in this limbo. There was
right,
no really talk of like, when are you girls going to get married? But that's it. They just had time
right.
on their hands, and that's what it was.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is interesting how that changes over
Yeah.
time. And so anyway,
All right. Go
back to
ahead.
our
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah.
So aside from reading, what are some of your hobbies?
All right. Well, I love cooking and baking. So when I tend to, if I'm not reading, I might be just kind of puttering around in the kitchen. So that's actually one of the nice things about this quarantine, lockdown, pandemic situation. The silver lining is that it gives me more time at home to just kind of unwind in that space. So that's probably hobby number two, I suppose.
Do you have certain types of foods that you like to make? Are you a baker or?
um, uh, yes, but I tend towards, um, I'm like a lazy baker. Like if you look at what people are making for fun on the Great British Baking Show, I'm like, I'm not out there like making fondant. I make a lot of fruit crisps and quick cakes and quick breads and things like that. So that's fun. I do make bread sometimes, but it's not as common. Um, and in the summer, like right now, it's so fun to cook with vegetables and fruits that are in season. So it's a lot of peaches and blueberries and zucchini, and corn, and things like that. So I have a good time with that.
Well, it is a great season with the harvest, us really being able to harvest things out of our gardens and others' gardens. So, okay, so uh, do you have places that you like to travel? Of course, nobody's traveling at the moment, but do you have places you like to travel? And do you have any things on your places to go on your bucket list?
Yeah, what a good question, Mary. So it sounds, easy, but I do like to go to the beach. And I've managed to do that a little bit this summer, staying far away from people. And that's easy. So I'm from New Jersey, and so the Jersey Shore feels like home to me, particularly Long Beach Island, which is where I typically go. And so that's like when I think of I want to go away somewhere, that's like kind of the easy first thought. But I would love to do a lot more travel. When I was in college, I studied abroad in England, and it's been 20-ish years since I was there, and I'd like to go back. I'd like to do more travel in Ireland. I spent a little time there, and honestly, so I did the backpacking around Europe thing when I was, 20, 21, and that was an amazing transformative experience. I'd like to do something like that again as an adult, knowing that there's so much freedom in that space. I think I've gotten used to traveling as an adult who's used to hotels and things like that, or less bumpy accommodations than students have. But it's also kind of amazing to be that unencumbered, to really just have like your backpack, and that's what you've got, and whatever money you can scrape together, and it's fun. So I'd like to do that, and I'd like to do it in more parts of the world. I've never been to South America. I'd love to go. I've never been to Africa. So I've got some continents to hit, I think, someday.
Interesting. Of course, none of us are traveling at the moment.
I know.
What was my other question? Oh, so what would be, what would, if you could live in a kind of a book universe, what would it be and why?
So interesting. So it's funny because I think I mean, long term, I don't really want to live in any space other than where we are right now. But for visiting, that would be something else. So I think I would love to kind of experience life in Philip Pullman's world of his Dark Materials books. Have you read them, Mary?
Mm-mm.
You know them? Okay, so they are amazing, and it's a world like our own, but different. And it's kind of, the whole thing is based on a bit of it's never mentioned as string theory, but the idea of like multiple universes, multiverse kind of thing. So it's almost a world like ours that's kind of split off to be a little different. And one of the key differences is that every human has a demon, which is there's kind of a soul manifestation that's expressed as an animal. And it's kind of their talking companion kind of thing. But it's like, it's more than that. It's more than like a pet. It's like part of who you are, and it's expressed externally at all times. It's really neat. And Mary, you would love these books. You really need to start with books.
Tell us the series again and the author.
Sure. Yes. So the first book is The Golden Compass, and the author is Philip Pullman, and they're amazing. And book 2, The Subtle Knife. Oops, that's not working very well. And The Amber Spyglass. They are going to change your life, Mary. They are.
Okay.
No, seriously. They're gorgeously written. They are incredibly thought-provoking. And they're some of the best books I've read ever in a long time. I mean, they're really, really good.
Endorsement.
I'm
sure. From a reader.
Yeah, exactly. No, you will. So start with The Golden Compass.
Okay, I will.
You'll love it.
I read so much for all the book groups that I either am in or lead. I got to squeeze these in when I can. So, we've been doing a lot of virtual programming since the shutdown in mid-March. Do you have a favorite virtual program that we have done in the past couple of months?
Yeah. So thanks to you, Mary, actually, I got involved in the Kickin' Coochant, wait, say it again for me, the cooking group on Facebook.
Cooking in quarantine. It took me forever to get that straight.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And that's been fun. It's so basically, for those who don't know, it's basically a Facebook group where you kind of post about interesting recipes that you've been cooking, with photos and commentary, and link somewhere to find it if you want to make it yourself. So that's been fun. That's probably been my personal favorite. But I've been extremely impressed at the range of programs that you developed during quarantine. Insane.
We're giving it a try. Yes, there's a lot of thought in kind of put into those, and what's going to be relevant, for folks. But thank you. And then, what are you reading now?
Gosh, I literally just finished a book yesterday and just read the first page of the next. I always have an enormous stack of things waiting for me. And the first page of the book I read was Frankly in Love by David Yoon, YA. I haven't gotten past the first page. Some books I've read lately that have been really great. Like I've read a lot of things lately, and I don't know if I mentioned them to, like, I don't know if they're mention worthy for like people should go read them, but a recent series of books that is quite popular that I read and enjoyed lately is the Grishaverse trilogy by Lee Bardo, who, again, it's YA fantasy, really engrossing and good. And we have most of them at the library, I believe, because I took them out. So yeah, so it's worth it. I read those. They were good beach books this summer. So for those who know what I'm talking about, they'll be like, yes, they're great. So yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone who wants to be a librarian?
Would be to talk to other librarians, because I think there's a lot of ways to be a librarian. In fact, and not always in a library, which people don't always know, you know, and some people might be more drawn to administration. Some people might want to do kind of customer service or reader's advisory work or program development. I mean, there are so many things to do. But I think that there might also be some misconceptions about what it means to be a librarian, especially in these evolving times when you are really kind of a steward of knowledge. And it's also, so I think that I'm getting yourself really informed with the folks who are on the front lines right now will be my first step.
Well, and we're always willing to talk to anybody who wants to talk about being a librarian. So give us a call. And then what do you like most about serving the patrons in this community? When I drive around town and I sometimes will think about the fact that, like, wow, I don't know anyone living on this street, but they know the library. And this is like, it's so meaningful and touches so many people. I just find it really like humbling. And I don't know if that's what I like best about it. I mean, what I like best is just being able to contribute my time and hopefully do some good. But it's so important, I think, to think about the huge range of our constituents who are out there and need us. And even if they're not frequent library goers, that they feel passionate about having our library be strong and useful for people. So it's such an important fixture that it just really resonates with me. Great. Well, those were my questions. I really feel like we got to know you a little bit better, Alice. Again, Alice Callison is our one of our board of trustees for the library. Alice, again, thank you for your service to the library, and thank you for being willing to be a part of Lunchtime with the Librarian today. So that's it for us today. And again, thanks for joining us. This is a program that we do on Fridays. And so be on the lookout for our next interview. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.